Namaste and Jai Swaminarayan. Welcome to this week's episode of Timeless Hindu Wisdom. This is a special web series delivered by the Swamis of BAPS Swaminarayan Sanstha. It has been initiated to inspire us during these challenging times with the universal wisdom of ancient Hindu scriptures presented in a contemporary, bite-sized format. Originally from Virginia in the United States, Brahmasetudas Swami graduated with a degree in journalism and political science from the University of Southern California before being ordained as a sadhu by His Holiness Pramukh Swami Maharaj in 2006. He has been studying Hindu scriptures, classical Sanskrit and Indian philosophy in India for 16 years and has a master's degree in Vedanta. Brahmasetudas Swami currently serves as a lecturer at the BAPS Swaminarayan Sanskrit Mahavidyalaya in Sarangpur, India. He has also authored several academic articles and books, including a textbook on the Akshar Purushottam Darshan Karikas, published from the Kaikulu Guru Kalidas Sanskrit University in Maharashtra, in conjunction with the BAPS Swaminarayan Research Institute in Delhi. He is an engaging speaker, having spoken widely on Hindu teachings, values, and practices. So let us now hand it over to Pujya Brahmasetudas Swami.
Shri Swaminarayan Bhagavan ki jai, Akshar Purushottam Maharaj ki jai, Radha Krishna Deva ki jai, Siyavar Ramachandra Bhagavan ki jai, Umapati Mahadeva ki jai, Pramukh Swami Maharaj ki jai, Mahanta Swami Maharaj ki jai, Pramukh Swami Maharaj Shatabdi Mahotsav ki jai. Major world events have caused shifts in our collective psyche throughout history. World War II and the Holocaust, for instance, led us to deeply fear armed conflict and showed us the depths of evil that lurk within the human heart. 9/11 and 7/7 evoked reckoning regarding our place in the world, and the past 3 years' tumultuous events have cast us into heated debates about gender, ethnicity, climate, media, and free speech. Along with such collective reflection, though, such events also provoke personal reassessment. And so, COVID has pushed us to consider not only society's role in protecting the vulnerable, but it's also given us impetus to ponder death and mortality, and to reevaluate how we see friends and neighbors, the human spirit, the divine. It's also reminded us of how precious time is. The pandemic has further allowed us to learn so much about our loved ones. Sure, living at such close quarters likely means that we've pushed each other's buttons a bit too hard at times, but it's also allowed us to closely observe our dearest and to understand their desires, their learning styles, values, strengths, and weaknesses. We can now better make sense of so many of those little bells and whistles that comprise them. Other loved ones may live away from us in isolation, but even so, we've perhaps spent time with them from afar, or even just thinking about them and realizing how deeply we value them. As we crest into what is hopefully the final stages of this tragic period, why not use our newfound awareness to recalibrate? We'll spend the coming sessions considering how Scripture can help us do so. Specifically, we'll take one of the world's most profound texts, the Shrimad Bhagavad Gita, and discuss how it can guide us towards improving two of our life's most intimate relationships, that between us and our children, and that between us and our own parents. Let's face it, we all want to steward successful families. We want to be better parents, and we also want to pay our dues by honoring our elders. But being a parent or child today just seems so complicated. Some of us come from immigrant or minority families, with children growing up believing they're less important than their peers. Some of us are single parents or part of working couples. Maybe our children aren't fashionable, don't match society's harsh beauty standards, or have skin color that's a shade different. It may seem trivial to us, but these can be unnerving sources of insecurity for a child. Our youngsters are also surrounded by technology. Once upon a time, kids could only reach as far as the end of the neighborhood on their own. What was the worst they could do? Scrape themselves or come back caked in dirt? Today, though, there are no borders. Their little hands and feet and ears and voices can reach across the world in seconds. It's like the omniscient yogis of yesteryear, whose senses had no limits. Our little yogis and yoginis scamper about with almost the same superpowers, minus the bandwidth to handle them. Then there are our own parents. They're just so different from us, and they can have vastly divergent views on relationships, child rearing, academics, social etiquette, and career choice. We grew up in an age that cherishes individualism and independence, ideals they may not perceive as we do. Their growing age, too, brings a host of physical and emotional challenges. Along with parenting and caregiving, we're simultaneously spinning so many other plates: our marriage, friends, extended family, work, health, finances, household chores. It all sounds daunting, and I'm sure it is. At times, though, solutions can come with just small paradigm shifts. Akshar Brahma Gunatidanand Swami, who's the first guru in the Akshar Purushottam Swaminarayan tradition, preached that the strength to face challenges can be found in unity. He explained using a parable. There was once a monarch who asked a frail man to snap a lone stick. The man did it in an instant. The king then asked a tall, burly fellow to snap a bundle of sticks. That man gave it a go, squinting his eyes, gritting his teeth, and jutting beads of sweat from his brow, but to no avail. The king then revealed, if we stand alone, our weakest enemies will conquer us. But if we stand together, there is no force in the world that can overcome us. You see, the bundle was unbreakable because its sticks were united. They supported each other and derived strength from each other. As members of a family, we too will be stronger the more we work in unison. That is, the more we learn to support each other and derive strength from each other. Parabrahma Swaminarayan describes in the Vachamrut, which is an anthology of his teachings, that the best way to learn a value is to closely observe someone who possesses that trait, and then to reflect on where we stand in comparison. The Gita can help us here because it presents a pristine example of unity at play. Specifically, it displays Krishna the teacher's solidarity towards Arjun, his student. And it shows Arjun the student's solidarity towards Krishna, his teacher and benefactor. The content of this exchange is surely profound, but we'll be considering the way these two individuals speak to one another and the emotions that their words and actions betray. Through this exercise, we'll seek to understand how unity looks, how it finds expression, and how we can apply it to our daily lives. Now, we're certainly not God. We're not warriors, and we're not amidst a battlefield teeming with soldiers. But Krishna and Arjun are also humans, just like us. And encased within their story is a precise methodology for how one human being can support another, and for how one human being can derive support from another. And just as Krishna here guides and supports Arjun, we too are entrusted with guiding and supporting our children. And as Arjun here learns from Krishna, we too have the chance to learn from our own parents to make ourselves stronger human beings. Let's then closely observe Krishna and Arjun's exemplification of unity and consider how we can apply these methods to empower our loved ones and ourselves. Some of what you hear in these sessions may just be affirmation, while some of it may be new. Nonetheless, congratulations for listening. It shows that you care and want to improve. Let's get on with it. The Gita has been around for thousands of years, and it's revered almost universally by the world's 1.2 billion practitioners of the Vedic Dharma. It's a relatively small text, just 700 simple verses, composed in the ancient language of Sanskrit. And it's also part of a much larger scripture called the Mahabharata. The Gita begins with the warrior Arjun, poised for combat, and asking his charioteer Krishna to take him forth to size up the enemies that he knows he'll soon be vanquishing. Now, Arjun had all along known that his own kinsmen were the aggressors against whom he'd be defending the kingdom. Yet when he came close and actually saw his loved one standing before him, a deep fear gripped him. He no longer felt it was just to fight. He refused to defend his nation. Tears shrouded his eyes, and he began to tremble. Now, this would typically be quite shameful for someone of Arjun's mold. He's the scion of a notable warrior clan and a formidable combatant who's trained for war since childhood. And there are thousands of legionnaires just within sight who look to him for inspiration. Moreover, he lives at a time when bravery, valor, and chivalry are valued even more than life itself. Yet, here he sits, on the brink of war, unable to muster the courage to fight. Luckily, he has Bhagwan Krishna with him, someone he trusts. And thus ensues the Shrimad Bhagavad Gita, a conversation between the disheartened warrior Arjun and his dear friend and guide, Krishna. The first way Krishna expresses his unity is by articulating his love. Successful human relationships are often based on affection, and the exchange between a mentor and a mentee is one such relationship. To be effective as a guide, we must have an emotional connection with the person we're guiding. And an important reminder and reinforcement for that connection is the act of expressing our love and adoration. Now, throughout the Gita, Bhagwan Krishna expresses his affection for Arjun in this way on numerous occasions. He says, for instance, Me sakha cheti, you are my friend. That's chapter 4, verse number 3. Re tata, O dear one. That's chapter 6, verse 40. Ishtosi, you are very dear to me. Chapter 18, verse 64. And priyosi me, you are my beloved. That's chapter 18, verse 65. Remember that Krishna too is a warrior. He's letting his guard down, though, to let Arjun know he's with him. Think back to how it made you feel when someone important to you said, I love you. Krishna's words must have meant so much. They must have been so comforting, because they showed Arjun that Krishna valued him not because his talents or strengths, nor his actions or decisions, but because his identity. They showed him Krishna loved him exactly as he was, unconditionally. Of course, we too love our kids. They are indeed the most significant people in the world to us. But we must communicate that love through words, yes, and also through warm gestures, intonation, facial expressions, and body language. Expressing ourselves as such provides them affirmation that they are cherished, and that too because who they are right now, not because who we wish they were or dream for them to be. Remember, these are youngsters we're dealing with, people unsure of their place in the world, and who are still forming their view of themselves largely based on what they see and hear on a daily basis. And so, expressing our unconditional acceptance helps them build a positive self-concept, reinforces their self-worth, and helps them feel secure. Our love should thus certainly be expressed whenever possible, before going to sleep or ending a phone call, while leaving the house, when they've done something nice, and perhaps most importantly, when they've done something disappointing. Sure, they sometimes may not respond, maybe because they're distracted or because it's routine. But if our affection comes from the heart, their ears do perk. And even just having our heartfelt sentiments hang around them is enough to have an effect. When they're older, years later, they'll still see our warm smiles and hear our loving words. And they'll keep those precious pieces of us with them, even long after we are no more. A second way Arjun expresses his solidarity is by giving Arjun time. Those we are guiding need to not only hear but also feel our love and support. For this, we must spend time with them. In the Gita, we see that a cataclysmic war is just about to commence. In fact, the first chapter's 2nd to 20th verses describe that drums, conch shells, and war cries have thunderously resounded. Thousands of troops on either side are ready to rumble. Think of the adrenaline. Think of the rush. Think of the occasion's absolute gravity. But when Krishna recognizes Arjun's need, he puts him at the absolute center of his attention. Not for a moment, but for enough time to conduct a deep philosophical conversation. This is unity in action. Oneness means that we see our loved ones' pains as our own and do everything in our power to relieve them. Let's again step into Arjun's shoes and think how loved he must have felt, with Krishna dropping everything for him. Think how he felt both in the moment and upon reflection in the war's aftermath. For our children to feel loved, we need to make time for them. Several years ago, I met an ophthalmologist in India named Dr. Jagdeep Kakadia, whose daughter was entering secondary school. Now, Indian education typically focuses on holistic development until years 8 or 9, and then shifts entirely towards academics in preparation for higher studies. Dr. Kakadia, though, felt his daughter's school wasn't equipped for that shift. And rather than reorienting her at another school or enlisting geographically scattered tutors, he put the onus on himself. He was a former student and lecturer, and he leveraged his skills. With his daughter's permission, while she was in year 9, he studied the entire year 10 syllabus and drafted lesson plans for each chapter. Then, during his daughter's summer vacation, he spent hours each evening teaching her and even arranged field trips so they together could see parts of what they were learning. And afterwards, for the next several years, he made it a point just to be with his daughter while she was studying. Surely this required much sacrifice. For 3 long years, Dr. Kakaria gave up his lunch, afternoon breaks, and evening work hours so he could be home early. The father's investment of time surely contributed to academic success, but much more importantly, the father's actions reinforced a powerful message, one that told his daughter that she mattered, that she could always count on him. More generally, consider the potency of such a message when it's shared through thousands of such individual interactions over the formative years through which we're entrusted with caring for our own children. Now, of course, not everyone has the flexibility or expertise to contribute exactly as the parent here, but I'd argue that what matters more than the number of hours or types of activities are frequency and quality. Let's talk frequency first. Together time must be frequent because kids are constantly reevaluating their sense of self-worth. And so even just a few moments of focus, offered at regular intervals, can work wonders. Here's an example of how this may be done. An old friend of mine from Texas has 2 boys, aged 8 and 6. He and his wife have arranged for each child to get between 5 and 15 minutes of one-on-one time with either parent several days a week. Interspersed in the week's remaining days are family time, wherein everyone hangs out together. So we see that there's balance so that each child gets regular individual attention from both parents. There's also no undue strain on any one caregiver, and there's also time for everyone to gel as a unit. More broadly, though, such routinization helps the child structure their expectations. So even when they're busy, they know the day or week won't end without that precious together time. It also helps us hold ourselves accountable, so this important time doesn't get washed away amidst all else that's required of us. Now let's consider quality. Commendably, we are often with our children physically, but we must also be present emotionally. Our entire being needs to be there. Just think of how much distraction there must have been for Krishna on the battlefield, but he drowned everything out. We must do the same. Rule number 1 then for quality together time is that it absolutely must be device-free. When we drift even for just moments during these allocated times, we're communicating to our children that they aren't so important. It's a subtle form of rejection. It's a chink in their armor, and over time, it can badly hurt. Rule number 2 for quality together time is that it must be done on their rules. We're so used to being in charge, but here, there should be no directions, no corrections, and no advice. Instead, the child should be allowed to choose which activities they like the most. There's actually a group of specialists I was able to work with while producing this talk, and one team member is a behavioral therapist who offered the anecdote of a mother that took up this advice. Her child wished to play the video game Fortnite during together time. Now, those of you familiar with Fortnite probably know it's not a mom thing to do. But this mother went in strong. Skins, avatars, emotes, et al. The boy was simply elated that through this activity, his mother, on a daily basis, became part of his world. Over time, they grew close, and the boy opened to activities his mom enjoyed. And so rule number 2 suggests that for the most success, together time should accord with our child's preferences. We can surely give options, maybe family dinners a few times a week, going for walks, or doing chores together, maybe tucking your child into bed or singing to them, telling stories. I met a child who likes his dad reading stories of Bhagwan Swaminarayan at bedtime. Others may like to hear Roald Dahl or Beatrix Potter and discuss the quirky humor and powerful lessons such stories convey. Some might like superheroes. And just after a bit of sifting, you too may find that superhero tales can lead to some intriguing conversations. Batman never kills. That's the perfect chance to share ideas about the value of life. Superman helps those in need. Again, a great chance to get your child's thoughts on charity. And the Black Panther story presents an opportunity to discuss how elders contribute to our wisdom and stability. The key here is to immerse yourself in something your child likes. As the kids get older, of course, we may need to shift things just a bit in order to include more grown-up activities, shopping together, drop-offs and pickups, or attending practices, tournaments, or presentations. Or it might just mean being around or being available when they want to talk. The key difference is when they're younger, they'll just want our attention in any which way. But with age, expectations change, and they'll only want us around if we match those expectations. So long as it's something the child enjoys and has chosen on their own, we're doing okay. The therapist I introduced earlier actually expressed from personal experience that this technique, if applied well and consistently, brings about significant change. It's said that 80% of success is just showing up. Let's learn from this proverb. Let's learn from specialists and our fellow parents. And let's learn from wise ones like Bhagwan Krishna. Let's promise to give our children the time they need to anchor themselves to us and to feel our profound love for them. Today we considered how COVID has given us impetus to reflect on life and family. We considered the challenges of being a parent or child today, and how unity can help us thrive in spite of these challenges. To understand how unity finds voice, we considered Krishna and Arjun's relationship in two ways: Krishna's expressions of love for Arjun and Krishna's willingness to dedicate time. We also learned how similar gestures on our part can help us support our children as they burgeon into adulthood. In the next session, we'll conclude our examination of Krishna's approach by understanding how he patiently listens, validates Arjun's emotions, and approaches him humbly. Until next time, Namaste and Jai Swaminarayan.
Thank you for tuning in to this session of Timeless Hindu Wisdom. If you have any feedback or would like to send in any questions for upcoming sessions, please email timeless@uk.baps.org. We look forward to you joining us again next time. Thank you.